Hey yo everybody, welcome to the channel. I am Freeloader from Team AQZ. After Axing comes Bravos, and those are the cards we are going to be rating today. Skybound Odyssey is right around the corner, and I am here to help you be best informed about what most certainly will be the accurate rating for all new cards. As per always, 1-star cards are the type of cards you hide in a dusty old shoe case at the bottom of your drawer in the hopes that nobody who cares about you would ever dare look into it. And the 5-star cards are the ones your significant other does in fact get jealous of. So without further ado, let's jump right on into it. Actually, before we take a look at the cards themselves, let's take a look at the new hero Sol and Halua first. This is mostly so we have a reference for when we are evaluating these cards, as a lot of them are designed for this hero in particular. I will be rating this card as well, but I'll do it after we see all the cards, as I think we should be a bit better informed as to the context of the hero in that case. Sol and Halua is very interesting. It is a hero that rewards you for passing early, which is very unique to Altered thus far, as so far the game has been all about having as many after you effects as possible. I'm curious to see if Sol and Halua can break that mold. I do have my doubts, but there are also a lot of solid things coming out for this hero. For now, this is the hero, and now, truly, without further ado, let's get on into the cards. Our first card in the Bravos faction is the Jumping Frog. Jumping Frog, a common rare, is similar. The main upgrade is of course the choice of where that boost goes, and on this new hero, for example, you can put it onto Halua. Halua can have Gigantic, so you can get extra value out of this rare. Still, I think I like the common. I think rare slots, as they always are going to be quite contested. I don't think the rare upgrade is going to be worth it. That being said, Jumping Frog plays very well with the rush mechanic that Bravos has. So I think Jumping Frog is actually going to be doing quite well, despite being potentially understated or having a condition you wouldn't typically want in the game of Altered. So I'm going to give Jumping Frog 3 stars at common and 2 stars at rare. Next, we do have the Altrun Teammate. This is a pretty solid card as well. It is slightly understated without its ability, but with its ability it's actually quite nicely statted. It is almost at Tracer level, but it doesn't have fleeting, so that's great. The downside is, of course, you do need to rush something out, and again, Halua, big synergies here. The rushing is not a downside at all. This card is definitely going to see play in Halua. I actually think Altrun Teammate might be good enough to even sneak its way into the other Bravos faction decks. Basira loves the boost. Even Kojo loves overstated 2-cost characters. Lots of potential on this card. I will also say something that's very notable is that Altrun Teammate might be probably not the first, but one of the first Bravos cards where the rare is actually just an upgrade over the common. A lot of Bravos rare characters at 2 cost especially have the tendency to get that free cost from reserve as soon as they're upgraded to their rare form, which often makes the card worse. Kojo is one of the only decks, for example, in Altered where you can run out of common slots and not really know where to put your rare slots into. And maybe Altrun Teammate can be a neat way to get some extra power out of a 2-cost character for a deck like that as well. Still, I don't think this is completely meta warping anything, so Altrun Teammate is just getting 3 stars both at common and rare from me. Next, we do have the Smoldering Jinn. Smoldering Jinn is a nice addition to the Jinn collection. It is the first Jinn that doesn't really mana orb itself, but actually mana orbs other cards from your deck, which is notable. It is also, of the Jinns, probably the worst one. That doesn't mean it's bad. All the Jinns are very strong in my opinion. And I do really like that Smoldering Jinn brings a bit of love to a deck that saw a little bit of play in the first set of Altered, which is the Axiom Bastion Kojo deck. And yeah, this is going to feel phenomenal in that deck as well. Now, is it going to be enough to revive that deck on its own? Probably not, but maybe in combination with some of the other cards, it's going to get somewhere. I'm not too huge on it. At rare, being a little bit cheaper from reserve helps a lot. Again, being a rush card is really nice for Soul and Halua. So I'm going to have a bit of faith in this card, and I'm going to give it a 2-star common and a 3-star at rare. Leviathan Spotter. Now, this card should look eerily similar to a certain Haven Sarengar, as it is in fact an extraordinarily similar effect. You're getting the same number of stats on a very similar distribution, albeit not quite the same, and from reserve you have the potential to draw a card. Now, given how strong Sarengar is, you should be a little bit afraid of the Leviathan Spotter. I think this card's going to be very good. Yes, it does have the condition you need to have a 4 or higher cost card in your hand, but those are getting better and better. At the earlier sets, not that many good 4+ cost cards. Now there's a lot of them. I think Leviathan Spotter is going to be quite solid because of that. I think though where this card really shines is in its rare form. You can straight up compare this to Baba Yaga, where Baba Yaga was a free 2-cost free 2/2 that from hand draws you a card, no condition. Meanwhile, the Leviathan Spotter is that same stat line with the same potential to draw you a card, albeit from reserve, but for a 2/2 cost. So in the right deck, this is better Baba Yaga, and that is very scary considering it is a suspended card. Definitely easy high ratings here for me. This card is getting a 3-star common and even a 4-star at rare. Tengu is, I've seen a lot of people refer to this as like classic power creep. Now I don't think it's actually technically power creeping anything in the Bravos faction, as Red for example has Seasoned at a 2/2/2 stat line, and other cards have other minor upsides that come with them. But just having this raw 7 stats for 2 cost, both from hand and reserve, is going to be very solid. This Tengu will trump a lot of decks on turn 1, especially given how common the 2/2/2 stat line is on things like Buddha, on things like Brass Bugs, and a couple other just commonly played cards. Chiron and Red as well, naturally. So I think Tengu is just a really, really good card. I think it's going to slot into a lot of Bravos decks. At rare, the upgrade of Ascending, yes, it has that rush, and rush can be good, but I think the common is so strong that you're often not really be considering this. Ascending is also not all that synergistic in the Bravos faction, so I think as rare, I'm only giving it 2 stars. It's really the common that's interesting here, which is getting a 4-star rating. Moving on to Phileas Fogg, very fun name to say. Unfortunately, this card is just pretty average in terms of the stat to cost ratio. Its from reserve ability is also, while synergistic with Soul, not very impressive. At rare, it gets an additional boost, but if you compare the rare to a Haven Warrior rare, it's really hard to justify playing Phileas Fogg. The only chance that I see for Phileas Fogg to see some play is if we somehow end up in a Soul meta, and you just really need that fast pass action. Otherwise, I'm not expecting too much from this card, so it's going to be 2 stars at common and 1 star at rare. Wingsuit Jumper. Now, boy, does any card game player get excited when they see the words draw a card on any card, and this card has it. It's pretty well statted as well. It does have rush attached to it, which is very attractive for Soul once again. Even for other heroes of the Bravos faction, this is going to be a fairly easy include. You're rarely giving up an expedition when playing this. You're still pressuring quite alright in stats. You're missing a single 4 stat from being on curve stat wise with Wingsuit Jumper compared to, for example, Phileas Fogg. I just think this is good enough. This is a phenomenal common. At rare, the 2 changes are that it is now a from hand ability, which is notably better, but I don't think it's enough better to justify the rare slot. The other thing that changes is you get the discard ability, which is again oddly synergistic with it being a from hand rush to draw a card now instead of from reserve. but I think you got better things to do with your rare slots than this, frankly. So Wingsuit Jumper is getting 4 stars at common and 2 stars at rare. With that, we are moving into the Bravos Harpooner territory. It's our new sabotage toy for the Bravos boys. Once again using that rush keyword. This has, and the easy comparison is definitely Haven Bouncer, which this has 2 extra stats when played from hand, but it's actually down a stat when played from reserve. The additional cost of needing to rush makes me actually feel like the common is right on that precipice of, do I really want to play this over the Bouncer? And I'm not sure. I could see it go either way, honestly. I think some players will prefer this, others will prefer the other. I think some players will prefer both, just so you can double sabotage occasionally on your first action for the turn, which is a neat trick. This card does get scarier. I'm not sure about better, but it definitely gets scarier at rare. This arrow sabotage is something that I don't think we've seen in Altered outside of Unique so far. I may be wrong on that, but it's definitely a very rare text box. And I think it's scary, because that is a lot of interaction. It's the equivalent of a Baku discard in terms of value you're denying from your opponent. And yeah, that's just scary. So tentatively, although Bravos Harpooner loses a stat point, I will actually give it a similar rating at rare to common, or the same rating I should say at rare and common, both of which are 3 stars. Priya Bravo Signaler is a very neat new card. The common is already solid, but I think this card really shines in its rare form. It just gets so many upgrades. Its weak stat line becomes evened out, so it becomes a flat 5/5/5, and the tough one does a great job at protecting it as well. The upside of the Aerolift token, I think, is fairly negligible in Bravos, but what cannot be understated is this is really just an add-on effect for this card. Because a 4-cost 5/5/5 tough one, you can consider playing that on its own. And getting 2 Aerolift tokens, one when you play it from hand, one from reserve, that is if you're advancing on those expeditions, I think that's just a bonus, and I think it's really solid. So this card is getting a 2-star at common, but a 3-star at rare. Next we have the Hare. Very fun card. Allows you to be the first player multiple turns in a row, and is kind of an antonym to the Tortoise for those of you that have seen that card. Now, I'm not too big on this. I think the big places to play this, or the obvious synergies, are Kojo and Soul for Bravos. Honestly, in both of them, I think it's just a bit awkward. Because if you're playing Kojo, then Buddha turns are your power turns. And if you're playing the Hare on your Buddha turn, then you're turning your power turn into a setup turn for your next turn. But at that point, why am I not making my power play on my power turn in the first place? And I'm not saying it doesn't have any application, but I just feel like it's not enough justification to run this card. In Soul, I think it has a different issue, where you play this on turn 2, let's say your opponent goes first on turn 1, then you go first. You play this for 4 cost, you're going to be first player again, and then next turn you're in a kind of awkward spot where you have a 4 cost 4/4/4 but no other play, but if you do have another play, then it's pretty easy for your opponent to just trade expeditions. And I don't know, are you actually getting your soul value out of it? I'm not convinced of this card. I might be wrong, but I'm going to rate it pretty low. I think the rare doesn't change much about the problems the card has, so it's just getting a 2-star common for me and a 1-star at rare. Beowulf. I really love this card. Just the idea of having an effect that's similar to Anchored functionally, but plays so much more interesting, in my opinion, is really cool. We are also getting a couple new cards that are very synergistic with this kind of effect. For example, just if you play Beowulf, you keep up 1 or 2 mana at the end of your turn, Beowulf goes to reserve, you play an Altrun Teammate, and then you get to rush something else as well for your next turn. That could be a cool line of play. I think it's solid. At rare, I think it's better, mostly because a lot of synergies open up at free cost. Some cards we'll get to later, like the colorful Cuckoo, for example, I think are going to love this as synergy. It's a solid card. I don't think it's that insane, just because at 5 cost it is understated. Who knows, I could see this go either way. I'm going to give it a 2-star at common and a 3-star at rare. Going up to the big bad boy of the set, it is Halua, Raging Leviathan. This at dusk, each character gains fleeting is a very scary line of text, but it comes down so late in the game that I don't actually think it is as majorly relevant. Still, the fact that it's a 7 cost 5/5/5 gigantic tough one, I think is already going to make it good enough for some of the Atsadi decks out there. It's going to be nice to have a common card you can play at a high mana cost that just does a job for you when you're playing Atsadi. There's a couple new synergies coming out. I don't know if they're going to see play, but I think card overall is solid enough, and it's getting a 3-star common, only a 2-star at rare, just because I don't think the upgrades are worth your rare slot. Soul's Hunt is up next. And at common, I think this card is just overcosted. You don't ever really want to spend 4 to remove a character, and a lot of the new characters we're seeing also have tough, so it's going to be even more expensive. But at common, at rare I mean, the cost goes down to 3, so I think you can view this as just a removal card that very occasionally you will also rush and sabotage in critical moments where it's like a game-winning play or otherwise nets you a big advantage, and I think it might see play as a 1 or 2 of here and there. Still, I'm not all too confident in this card, and it's getting only a 1-star common and a 2-star at rare. Moving on to Bravos Signet. Shout out to Simon for revealing this one, though he did not get the tattoo for it, so you know, we'll work on it, maybe next reveal. Bravos Signet, it's a flexible card, but I do think it's just overcosted for all of its modes. It is also the only Signet that is not 2/4 cost. I wonder if that was the case in testing, but then it was just way OP, because at 2/4 cost, this would be insane at 2/4 cost. But at 3/4 cost, it's a bit clunky. I could see this maybe seeing play in some Atsadi decks that really are digging into that ramp theme. Even there, I don't know if this is the best thing you can be doing anymore. There's just so many good cards to play nowadays, and these slots are all very contested for your deck. Outside of that, I don't really see it for this card either. At rare, it's not great at rare. I saw someone compare this to Geyser, and honestly, it is just worse Geyser in one of its modes, because you put the top card of your deck into mana, which is the ramp portion, and then you can bounce something, but with Geyser you can bounce whatever you want, and it costs 1 less, and Geyser goes to mana instead of a random card, which isn't a big deal, but it's nice that you have a guarantee not to mana your uniques. Yeah, you get extra flexibility with potentially boosting something by free, but I just do not see it for this card. It is too expensive. Bravos Signet is getting a 2-star at common and a 1-star at rare. We have Rage. Halua's Rage. Very nice art. I do quite like it. It's also a solid card, I think. You can boost up your Jinns and feel good about yourself. You can boost up a lot of stuff in the late game, I think especially in Bravos. You have these turns in the late stages of the game where you're playing a bunch of cards, and you're playing a lot of cheap cards, but you then run out of ways to spend your mana. And Rage is just very nice because you want to play cheap after use in the late game that puts stats on the board, and Rage is 2 actions in 1 card that puts a ton of stats on the board. It's a free cost 4/4/4 in the late stages of the game. I think that's just really solid. I don't think it's going to be like big card, it's not going to be a meta definer, but I think it will see play. I'm giving it a 3-star common and a 1-star rare because the rare is just worse than a rare Helping Hand. Parliament of Ashes is up next. This is a cool new landmark that will give you protection, and I honestly don't know what deck this will go in. I think the rare is mostly for Atsadi. I think the common I could see in all the other decks. And although I don't know what the decks will look like that are playing this, I'm sure one of them will be solid enough to give this card the 3-star rating. And I'm just going to rate both common and rare at 3-star. It's a really high floor for this card. It's the ceiling isn't much higher, but it just plays nicely. There's also a lot of new removal entering the format, so I could see this card just be really solid in all kinds of decks. The Grems is a concern, of course, but even there, if you're running the rare, it's not that big of a deal if you lose this. So yeah, 3 stars both at common and rare for Parliament of Ashes. Finally, for the in-faction cards, the final one is the Flying Dockyard, and what a disappointment in a faction where we already have Mess. The only hero you would consider this card in, I believe, is Soul, and if you are running Soul, I imagine you don't want to do this. The version here I have a little bit of hope for, not a lot, but a little bit, is the rare version, as up till now, landmarks that give 1 boost per turn have proven to be quite good in Altered, or at least surpass expectations. And Flying Dockyard at rare does that. Still, I'm not all too hopeful on this, and I'm giving it a 1-star common and a 2-star at rare. Heading on over to the out-of-faction cards, we are going to be starting with this nice little Medusa. Now, Medusa is fairly understated, and using a rare slot on an effect like this I think is going to be clunky. There is merit to having an expensive play from reserve for the fast passing strategy, but the issue with Medusa, it's also reactive, so I don't really see a world where this pops off, and Medusa is getting a 1-star rating for me. Restocking Station, as much as I love it in the Axiom faction, using a rare slot on this in Bravos is far more expensive in terms of deck building. Now, that being said, the helping hand strategy of removing fleeting from your own characters is getting a lot of support in this set. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Restocking Station does see fringe play in some of those strategies, but I wouldn't get my hopes up on this one, and it is getting a 2-star rating from me only. Then we are moving on to the Mountain Guide. I don't think there's too much here either. 2 cost for only 4 stats is just very understated. The Mountain stat in particular is also one that Bravos does not struggle with at the moment. The discard ability is fairly unique in the Bravos faction, but I don't think there's a whole lot of strategies in Bravos that can abuse an effect like this, or that would give up a rare slot for its utility, and so Mountain Guide is going to have a 1-star rating from me. Lyra Aerialist is another cool card. Bravos just does not really have tools to activate this ability consistently. The fact that in Arena, Lyra Aerialist is back to a 0/5 free is pretty rough as well. And I just think if you want to run a big booty free cost card, just stick to Tomo Gozen at common. Lyra Aerialist is going to be getting 1-star from me as well. Now, Nuit might just be the hardest to evaluate card of all in the new set. It has a lot of potential, just a completely uninteractable 1-0 or even 2-0 with the right setup seems incredibly strong. Minor upside since you get to pass first as well, even before your opponent, so nice for Soul. This has, especially in combination with certain uniques, or I'm sure also certain Nuit uniques, are going to be really incredibly strong. And yeah, I don't know, it's very hard to evaluate this because it might just be too tough to get off consistently. It might be a dead card in your hand too often. I think this card is going to be really strong. This has potential to be even more frustrating than a card like Small Step Giant Leap, and might end up being a 5-star, even suspension or ban worthy card. But I'm going to say it's not going to break that mold, and it's going to be a 4-star card. Definitely watch out for this one, really hard to evaluate and very curious where it will end up. After that very exciting card, we do have a Playful Leviathan. And as much as there is some synergy with this being in Basira where you can boost it up, I think it's too difficult to line up the expeditions that you're really happy to use a rare slot on this. and I think Koi is going to be a 1-star card. Eris is, as far as I am concerned, in terms of competitive play, a complete meme. It is pretty funny, but with no dice rolling manipulation. It is also a complete luck card, so it's not going to be very competitive. It's a 1-star card. The Painthouse, I think, is a really cool card. I actually think it's kind of strong as well, but I also think you're never running this over Haven. Because you're never running this over Haven, it's a 1-star card. I guess it could be Haven copy number 4, but I don't think Bravos decks are that desperate for the effect. Even then, it's max 1 boost, so Painthouse, unfortunately, also only getting a 1-star rating, although it is probably a stronger card than it lets on. Then we are moving to Colorful Cuckoo. I did reference this earlier with the rare version of Beowulf being able to cheat this out, and I think it does really well. My sales pitch for this card is pretty easy. Picture a situation where you are playing as Basira against a Sigismar, and you are the first player on turn 1. You just get to play a Colorful Cuckoo in the companion side, and it is virtually impossible for your Sigismar opponent to punish you for that. Because if they play a character to try and 2-0 you, you have a free Colorful Cuckoo anchored for next turn. Its 2 reserve ability is already activated, so it essentially forces your opponent to give up a trade unless they have removal, but it's very hard to have removal for this before it is boosted. And beyond that, the potential of Colorful Cuckoo is quite solid. It has good synergies, it can help you fix your reserve by converting it into mana, and it is an anchored card that I think will feel good to play. So Colorful Cuckoo kind of checks all boxes for what a card like this would need to do, and I actually think it's going to be very strong. I think it's best in Basira just because of that turn 1 line, that you can boost it up to a free on the first character your opponent plays. It might still be good in other decks as well, and there are nice synergies in here with Beowulf, for example. So Colorful Cuckoo to me is a 4-star card. Following that, we have another banger here in Kauri's Intervention. Not for Basira, but for Etsadi this time around. It's a 1-cost after you that sets up your hunger to be completely removable. If you are sitting on 10 mana and your turn is Kauri's Intervention, Milk, and then Hunger, you are set. That is so hard to beat already, because usually the lines to punish Hunger include removal. Those most likely won't work anymore. I don't know if this is going to be a free of in Etsadi. I think it might even see very spotted play in Soul or Basira as well. But I'd be very surprised if this doesn't make the Etsadi list as a 2 or free of. Oh yeah, Kauri's Intervention is a 4-star card. Now we move on to Tane. Tane is a really interesting one. I'm probably absolutely butchering the pronunciation, but it is in a way a 6-cost 10-10-10 in stats. It's really interesting. My initial reaction on this card was, it's terrible. And I think a lot of that has to do with the second arrow being each animal adventurer in your reserve gains 1 boost. And in my head, this card was giving up significant power to gain that arrow effect. If I just imagine, even without that arrow on the card, I think this card is actually fine. It has tough 1 for protection. It has pretty solid stats on the turn you play it, especially given that you're in Bravos, which is the ramp faction, so you can maybe get this out a turn or 2 early. And it has anchored and sets you up for a crazy next turn. I think Tane is a great card for potentially Etsadi, but also for Soul. Still, I'm a little wary of it, just because I think the decks might end up being a bit more synergistic than what this does, especially for Etsadi. And then I don't know if you're just playing a 6-cost 5/5/5 anchored in Soul, even if you're getting maybe an extra boost out of it. It's a bit hard. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a 3-star card. I would be surprised if it ends up being a 4-star card. But I am going to give it a 2-star rating for now. Could easily be wrong on this one though. Then we have one of the first cards we saw from the set, which is the out of faction Joining Fates. Sets up beautifully with Halua. is also an amazing play to go alongside Hunger. You know, you could have that dream Kauri's intervention, Milk joining Fate's Hunger play on Itsadi, and have an anchored, tough 5 fleeting Hunger that's just eaten everything, and you will feel on top of the world. Here is my main qualm with the Joining Fates card, which is that you are, in Itsadi, already very invested in your high cost cards, and I think you would rather spend a rare slot on something that gives you a bit more consistency than making your high roll an even higher roll. Unfortunately, I don't think Joining Fates is going to be seeing too much play there. I do think it has solid potential in Soul, just because I think Soul is going to be more about curving out. And then maybe playing a top of the curve, Joining Fates into something big might be a more solid line. But I'm not too big on this at the moment, and I'm giving it also only a 2-star rating. Woolly Field has maybe the best art of the set, depending on how you like your art. Especially that sheep on the left is incredible goofy eyes there. In terms of the card itself, I don't think it does anything. There is synergy with Colorful Cuckoo, but that is also just about where it ends. I guess you can have an at-will Basira boost, but there's no way you're spending a rare slot on this. This is a 1-star card. We can move on. And we are moving on to Yanna, Qorgan Agent. This card, again, there's Soul. It's a kind of expensive card that can likely trade 1-for-1 expeditions, but you're also likely sleeping something your opponent has. Like, yeah, at common, I could run this. At rare, I don't really see it. I think you're just blatantly giving up an advantage when you could be playing other cards where you could be pushing for an advantage. So, Yanna, Qorgan, Operative, Qorgan Agent is also getting a 1-star rating from me. Skybound Odyssey, the card this set is named after, or the other way around, is a pretty overloaded card, honestly. Ascend is not a big synergy in Bravos. In my opinion, Ascend comes out to ascending 1 expedition is essentially adding 0.5 value stats to it. And you do that on both expeditions. That's +1/+1/+1, which is roughly worth 1 mana. You get to get 6 cost worth of characters out for 5. This card also replaces itself. In a way, this card is 5 cost, play 7 mana worth of stuff. This card has a lot of potential, and it comes with the downside of basically making your entire turn on your first action. It's just the amount of build around you need to put into making Skybound Odyssey good is very big. I think that is what will ultimately be the quote-unquote downfall of this card. I still think if you have to build around, it is strong, so I'm giving it the 3 stars, but I don't expect it to be super meta defining. And now to Suha Qorgan Operative. That's where I got the Operative from earlier. This card is phenomenal. We have been seeing Bravos players play uniques with this effect for quite a while now to counter Traced, and now we have this effect on a rare. This card goes really well to support that helping hand theme I was talking about earlier as well. It's incredibly strong. It has a lot of potential. It does a lot of things. It synergizes with Basira. It does really well in Kojo. I think it will do well in Soul as well. And yeah, I think this is just a no-brainer 4-star card. It's not that 5-star meta definer, I think, though it honestly might also be. It's just such a strong interactive piece. It's going to be hard not to run this. Absolute banger card. The final card we're taking a look at in this video is, second to last card actually we're taking a look at in this video, is the Yzmir Signet. Yzmir Signet has 3 lines of text, of which you can choose 2, and I kind of like all of them, and yet I don't love the card. I think the reason is often when you have your draw card effects, when you have your removal effects, you either want them to be on 2-cost cards, and ideally to also come with stats, or at least have one of those 2 things be true. As is with the Yzmir Signet, you're going to be putting yourself behind on that turn a lot. If you're removing a 2-cost character, you're down the mana of your opponent and you haven't committed any stats to the board. If you draw card Sabotage, you are really weak for that turn. You've committed 3 mana to doing nothing. Maybe an Itsadi deck can get away with this sometimes. Maybe some of the other decks can run this as a 1 or 2 of, but I think you're just giving up too much on the turn you play the Yzmir Signet for it to be great, so I'm only going to be giving it a 2-star rating. That was all of the cards. Now we only have the hero left to evaluate. The hero card is of course Soul and Halua. Now this one is powerful, but it comes with a big limitation. In Altered thus far, we have not been playing for this type of effect. It's been all about after-viewing as much as possible, and Soul and Halua really flips the script on that. The demo deck event has happened, and Soul and Halua was the strongest deck. I will also say that I was surprised by the amount of power you have in the later stages of the game of threatening a 2/2 every turn, compared to Kojo and Buddha only threatening it every second turn. With Buddha, there's a flow state to the game, where you have a setup turn and then a power turn. Playing against Buddha, the same is true. You have one turn to set up for the power turn that is inevitably going to happen when the Buddha comes out, and you can set up by playing something that will be anchored. When a token comes out every turn, you don't have the setup phases anymore, and that can really break the rift. So because of that, I think I was underestimating Soul and Halua before. Initially I was going to give it a 2-star rating, maybe even a 1-star rating, but I actually have, with the amount of support this set has for Soul and Halua, my faith has gone up, and I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. Awesome! That is it for the Bravosi meatballs today. I will be doing more faction reviews as well, so stay tuned for all of those. For now, I'm going to keep it nice and short. Adios, thanks for watching. I hope you win all of your Altered games until you see my next video, at the very least, and farewell.